Now, I really wish that before I'd started my preparation or maybe in the middle of my preparation for this sermon, I'd heard Andrew's children's talk, because that was really excellent. My theme this morning, picking up this Bible reading, is mission. Now, if you know anything of my story, you'll know that I'm a missionary kid and was born in Fiji to missionary parents. And that has played a big part in my journey and growing up and having that, I guess, in the background. But it was always influencing. The people who visited were always, oh, well, this is a family who lived down the road when we were in Fiji. And, oh, these are Fijians, so they're just part of the family and we've invited them to come and stay. This was always happening. And so mission was always a big part of my family heritage. But if you know something of the story of our denomination and the denominations that came into be the uniting church, you'll know that particularly the Methodist Church had a goal. They had a mission. When they arrived in Australia, one of the things that they decided was, we are going to build a church within walking distance for everybody. We want to have churches so frequent, placed everywhere, that any person could walk to their local Methodist church. Now, WA was a bit slower in being settled in some of the other states, but if you go to the other states, you'll find that there are these tiny, tiny towns and they all have a Methodist church in them, or at least there's still a building there. Maybe there's no longer a congregation. And sometimes you walk through with sadness, or you drive through these towns thinking, gosh, there are all these empty shells of churches that used to be. But when you think about that mission statement, they did amazing things. The congregations that I've been in up until now, I had 10 years of having 5 congregations spread all over the place, and I found that incredibly difficult. But it was all because of this heritage, that a group of people set out and said, nobody should be too far from a church. Nobody should be able to say, church is too far for us to get to on a Sunday, so we don't go. And so they set out with that mission. We're going to make church accessible to everybody. And if that means putting a church every 10 kilometres in every single town, we're going to do it. And in many places they did. And I think that's amazing. It might seem a little sad now, but when you look at what they accomplished, it's pretty brilliant. If we could do the same, if we could say, right, God has called us to do this, whether it's with the space of land that we have, to do something in this space here in terms of worship, or in our fellowship space, or the playground out the back, or with our car park and the relationship we have with the restaurant, the way that we connect to this very community, the people who live here within, striking distance. Now it's push bikes and cars, and some people walk. But, that's our patch. And if we could be as successful in saying God has called us to make church accessible to these people, to make faith engaging and relevant for these people, for this patch, we would be amazing. And I'd be super, super excited to see that happening. I am super excited being here, and in reality I think we're doing amazing things. But I look forward to the time when we can see that growing more and more, and those connections more successful. Mission is my topic because of this wonderful sermon we have from Paul, where he does wander into Athens. He's on Mars Hill, and because at the top of the hill there is this massive temple to Mars, the Greek god of war. Okay, now if you guys are into Greek mythology, or you're not, I know my family is. They're all reading Greek mythology novels at the moment. But you need to get yourself into that mindset where there are temples to the god of war, to the god of love, to the god of prosperity, to the god of peace, to the god of the seas. There's one to the god of the sky, to the moon and the sun. All of those things have their temples or their shrines. And Paul looks at all this as he comes in. And they still believe all of those things. There are still people worshipping all of those different little gods, if you like. And he comes across the hall table drawer that has this unknown key in it. A key or a temple that nobody remembers what it's about or who the name of this god is. I read a number of stories explaining it. Basically, the notion went that, well, we have a god to everything, a god to war, a god to peace, and a god to this, that and the other. But in case we've missed one, we'd better have a god, we better have a shrine or a place to sacrifice things to, or offer things to appease a god that maybe we've missed. Because their notion was, if you want your crops to go well, you need to offer the appropriate sacrifices to the appropriate god. And the thing was, if you were worshipping the god that was close to your house and you were offering sacrifices there, but your crops aren't going well, or your kids get sick, or maybe your servants all run away, or something starts going wrong in the household, maybe you'd better start offering also at the god over there, or the temple here, and so they had this concept that in order to get things right in your life, you needed to be offering the right sacrifices to the appropriate gods who controlled whatever it was, sickness or misfortune or wealth or whatever. And if they didn't work, if you'd offered sacrifices at all of those temples and people were still sick, well, then what do you do? So they had this answer that, well, maybe there must be a god in charge of this particular problem that you haven't offered a sacrifice to. So they had this shrine set up to the god that you might have missed, to the god that might not be covered by war and peace and sun and moon and stars and sea and all of those things. And Paul says, I want to tell you about this God that you have in the back of your mind, that there might be someone else out there, there might be power out there that you haven't heard about, that hasn't been explained to you, but you acknowledge is there. In those times when nothing else works and when things go wrong, maybe even tapping into those hopes that you wish you could do something at this altar and it would work. He says, I want to tell you about that God. A God that you haven't heard about, but is out there. And he runs through, his sermon breakdown is fairly good. Very good, in fact. He says, God is not made, but he's the maker of all things. He says, God has guided nations and people through history. God has been there at work through all of time. And God is at work now. God is in control now. He has been, but is still. God has made women and men to instinctively look for and long for God, to want to know him. And that's why you have this shrine, because God made you that way. God made you searching and kind of hungry to know him. But he says the days of groping, the days of looking and seeking but not finding, fumbling in darkness, those days are past. He says there's no excuse for having to the unknown God anymore, because I've told you his name. I've introduced you to this God, and he's the God that the Jews call Lord. And he came to us in the form of Jesus, who we call the Messiah, or Christ. He says there will be a day of judgment, because now that I've told you, now that Jesus has come, you know. Before you didn't know about God, God didn't, wasn't concerned about that, in the sense that he wasn't going to judge you if you'd never heard about Jesus, his son. You'd never been introduced to the real God who made heaven and earth and who made you all. God wasn't going to judge you. But Jesus has come. And Jesus is this judge. And now that I've come and introduced you to him, you need to give your life to him. You need to accept that and realise that he is your God, whether you know it or not. And the proof of all of this is in Jesus' resurrection. God raised him from death. Now, many times when I preach, I might try and grab something from the world around us. I might try and grab something that's going on in your life that you will be invested in already, and try and tap into that. Maybe it's a joke, or maybe it's an illustration of what's been happening in the news just recently. It might be a piece of contemporary culture. But I'm not done until I can connect that to the person of Jesus. And I'm not done until, in my little speech, until it points away from me and away from you and points to Jesus and to the one who sent him. I have to get there eventually, even if you think it takes too long. The one who sent Jesus to us is a sending missionary God. Martin Luther said, a preacher preaches on Sunday so that the congregation can preach to the world Monday through Saturday. What he means is that all of you are preachers. All of you are missionaries. All of you are the ones who get to go out and take this good news that we have to the world out there, to our patch, to this community that we belong to. Imagine, if you will, for a moment, that the women on that Easter morning heard that message, go and tell the others, and they thought, that means the other women, or we just talk amongst ourselves. And they never went back and told the disciples huddled in their room. Imagine if those 11 disciples huddled in their room thought, the angel told us to go and tell this good news and share this good news. But what he meant by that was the 72 disciples, the followers. We should share it amongst the 72. That's what he meant. Imagine if those first converts, the first Jews who realised Jesus is the Messiah, thought, well, this is just good news for Jewish people. If the church ever gets to a point where it feels that we have received this good news and isn't it great for us, and they have sort of a closed-in idea of what us means and who the good news is for, then the church begins to die. We are all recipients of this good news that Jesus, God, is for us. And we were made for him. So whenever, by God or Christ's Spirit, you are thrust across some boundary into some subculture, or across the boundaries of gender or race or even generation, you're on mission. Because you're taking this good news to another group. You're taking it from here, if you like, out there. And whether you do it with some great little hook like Paul did and say, you know, this key that you've kept all these years and you cannot work out what it's for, I can tell you what it's for. And his name is Jesus. Now, you may not be that articulate. You may not be the best preacher in the world. You may not feel that you're full of theological understanding. But God sends you anyway because you have received good news. And that's all you need to share. That Christ came for you and God made you for him. It's really very simple. It's all just about that relationship you have with God that you're sharing. But I guess at the back of that, you need to believe that that relationship you have, that you know about, is good news for the person you're standing next to. And have the desire to share something good with them. I'm not saying it's easy, but what I do know is from my work on the Air Force Base, when I'm standing next to somebody who has no church knowledge at all, what I like is that if I'm to really genuinely try and connect this good news that I have a relationship with God that has been saving for me, that would surely be great for them. The first thing I need to do is I need to know them. I need to be in relationship with them. And I actually really enjoy that part of it. Because for me that's genuine. For me that's genuine that I need to know about that person and care about that person. I need to be involved with that person's life. And I really enjoy doing that and having something to offer them because it's in relationship again. And somehow I get to model the relationship of God sending Jesus and loving Jesus and Jesus who came to me and loves me, and I was made to love God, and now I can include this new person. That seems to make sense. And all of a sudden being a missionary and going and telling doesn't seem so difficult at all. It just means I need to genuinely walk alongside one person at a time. Whether it's neighbours who don't come to church except for maybe the few times that we've invited them. Or it's the people that I get to work alongside with, whom it's my job to go and support and take God to them. I want you to think just for a moment about where you're going to be Monday through Saturday. The connections that you're going to make with people this coming week. I want you to think about how you might go about translating that relationship of faith to those people. Because that's the difficult part of our job, is just making that translation from the churchy language we use to maybe the language they speak that is quite different. But that's okay. That's where we get to live it. That's where we get to engage in it and immerse ourselves in their lives and their culture and whatever language they speak. How might you find a way to show that relationship of good news for them, or tell them that God came for them and God made them for him? Let's pray.